Hannah Davlantes live in the Skyline studios for you here on WGN. A number of stories coming out about Uber recently, and we have a rideshare expert joining us now. He's a local Chicago attorney. He deals with a lot of safety issues with Uber and is up to speed on so many of the issues that have made headlines lately. His name is Bryant Greening. Bryant, thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
So there are just so many things that have come out lately, but I do want to go to that one story out of London where they banned Uber from essentially operating there. They yanked their license and they said it was over a safety concern. But the why piece of that story, I think because it was in London, sort of got lost. And the why piece of it, I think, is important. It talks about how drivers there, and an alarming number of them there, were sharing their profiles. They were basically driving for Uber. They apply, they get vetted, they get their car vetted, and then somebody else, family member, friend, starts driving for them. Sometimes they even were able to change profile pictures or change it so that you really didn't know who was driving. And the interesting part when I was reading those articles is you were quoted in many of these national news organizations, and I know you're a Chicago attorney. LegalRideshare, LLC is the name of your company. You were quoted as saying, is it happening elsewhere? And your feeling that I was sensing from it is that you're saying, absolutely, it does happen.
It absolutely happens in the United States, and it's happening in Chicago. It's a very scary proposition that the person who is supposed to be driving your Uber car or Lyft car might not be the one who actually shows up. We are hearing a lot of scuttle around the community that this is a problem that drivers are aware of and don't really know how to solve.
Well, so how is it done in your experience? Because I was reading the article and it just seemed as if, other people were subbing out. Do they have to look like the original driver? Or are they changing enough of the profile or showing a hazy enough profile that they were getting away with it? How did it work?
So a lot of times they're not changing the profile picture at all. We were actually at the O'Hare Airport parking lot where drivers wait to pick up fares from the airport. And there were drivers there who were pointing to specific vehicles saying, you see those three guys over there, they're just taking turns in one car picking up passengers. And that's allowing them to operate on the platform for an extended period of time, much longer than one person would normally be able to drive.
So what is the benefit of that is what? Do you share one car?
The benefit for the driver is that they can continuously make money. Oftentimes one driver can't put in that many hours. They get tired, they've got to use the bathroom, they got to get something to eat. This allows for continuous operation of the vehicle, and presumably those drivers are all sharing the proceeds. And is there benefit or a bonus that Uber gives for driving more hours? Is there some sort of incentive plan? There are incentives that Uber puts out, such as drive a certain number of rides per week. We'll give you a bonus. The city of Chicago actually imposes limits on the number of hours that one driver can operate as a rideshare driver. However, it's really tough to enforce that because when you hit your mark, your 10 hours, say, on Uber, you can then just turn on the Lyft app, and there's not really any way for them to share that data or check to make sure that driver isn't partaking in that practice. Now, the downside of that to me as a passenger is you really don't know who's driving, and there are vetting processes that a driver has to go through in order to drive an Uber, right? Yes, there's a background check, there's a vehicle inspection, there's also a rating system. So when you get in the back of an Uber car that's being operated the way that it should be, you have a certain amount of comfort that the company is vouching for this driver. They're saying, we did a background check, we believe that this person is safe, this person has a history with us as a driver, so they haven't committed some sort of crazy driving infraction. If a different person starts operating that vehicle, those checks suddenly disappear. 630, I'm an Uber driver in Chicago. Uber is starting a PIN system which matches the right driver and the passenger. Have you heard about that? I have heard about the PIN system, and Uber is trying to create a safer system. They're innovating. They've recently put in a emergency button. They're talking about recording the inside of the cars. Obviously, there may be some privacy issues that need to be discussed there. The bottom line is the company needs to keep trying, keep innovating, keep using its resources until rideshare is safe for everybody who gets inside the car.
Speaking of safety, the big headline last week, and I want to get to that, is Uber did voluntarily release its first safety report. Thursday, I believe it came across nearly 6,000 claims of sexual assault in 2017 and 2018. But they're reminding us that was out of 1.3 billion rides. I guess that seems like a small number, but is there a way to crack down? Obviously, that's not okay. It's sort of a disturbing outcome of getting into a ride with someone you don't know. Do you know anything about the numbers of people? Were they people who were ride sharing? I mean, people who were using other people's profiles or shouldn't have been driving, but were anything in that data that you saw that stood out to you?
So we would argue that those numbers are unacceptable. One of the issues that Uber keeps running into is they're trying to contextualize everything. They're trying to say, here, we're going to be so transparent. We're going to put out this report. We're going to tell the public exactly what's right and wrong about the company. But then they say, please keep in mind, though, that there's all these billions of rides, so therefore these numbers aren't so bad. Uber needs to take responsibility for safety and should be doing everything that they can to get those figures as close to zero as absolutely possible.
Well, and you see in every industry, when you do a self-analysis, it's never as good as an independent analysis, right? We've seen all kinds of things that have happened in different types of industries. When you say, okay, we're internally going to look into this, it's different than saying, let's bring in an outside data company or investigative team to look into our security data. But Uber seems very reluctant to do that. And maybe the other rideshare platforms are. They're just the largest, so they get the most attention.
Well, let me give you an example of where Uber kind of couched the numbers. We're a personal injury law firm. We deal with car accidents every day. When we talk about car accidents, Uber didn't put all the numbers out there. They talked about only fatalities. They talked about only periods 2 and 3, which is when the driver is actually connected with a passenger. What about all the time that the driver is spent cruising around the streets waiting to connect with a fare? How many accidents happened then? How many times was there a non-fatal occurrence where somebody suffered a serious injury, like a traumatic brain injury or a broken bone or a slipped disc in their back? These are the cases that happen all the time, and Uber's report is totally silent on that.
So you do handle cases where people have been in accidents involving a rideshare vehicle in general, not just Uber, Lyft, via any of the number of platforms. Isn't that right?
Correct. Our law firm helps drivers, passengers, and victims of rideshare accidents. So what we mean by that is if you're a rideshare driver and you get injured, you can come to us. If you're a rideshare passenger and get injured, you can come to us. Or if a rideshare car hits you, rear ends you, we're going to help with that as well. The numbers in Uber's report don't hit on a lot of those accidents. I can tell you that a significant number of what we see is period 1 accidents. So when that driver is just cruising around, how often does that happen? I think Uber has a responsibility to tell the public what its drivers are doing and what kinds of issues they're facing.
Right. Yeah, if anyone gets the paper copy of the Tribune, I know I do, there was a huge 2-page ad in the front section that says, alert our ride check technology, and we can check to see that drivers and riders are okay. It's uber.com/safety. There's some kind of a button you can press on your app if you're in trouble.
Correct. One of the things that Uber is doing well is that they're allowing people to track rides. So if your loved one is in the car, you can track their ride if they give you access to it, and then you get to make sure that they're doing okay. And if not, Uber will actually check in on you and make sure that the ride is going as it's supposed to.
Bryant, just a few seconds left, but we have a texter from the 630 asks, Anna, can you find out if the driver's photo can be expanded on your phone? I found this too. I cannot, and sometimes the very small picture doesn't seem to be the same person driving. I've had that feeling too, or sometimes it's even a profile. Can you even expand it, or is there a way to double check that? The driver's the driver.
I'm not positive that you can actually click on the photo and expand it like you would with a normal picture on your phone. One of the things that we want to make sure Uber does is requires better pictures, requires clear pictures,
yes.
requires pictures that are taken more often. We've heard rumblings that Uber might start requiring drivers to take photos each time that they get in the car to do some sort of evaluation or analysis to make sure it's the right person. That doesn't sound like a bad idea.
No, it sounds like it would be a great idea. Thank you, Bryant Greening. Bryant Greening is our guest from LegalRideshare, LLC. He's a Chicago attorney who deals with all kinds of rideshare issues, especially safety and accidents and things like that. We appreciate you weighing in on a number of issues here, Bryant. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Have a good rest of your afternoon.